We finally got some details of the guaranteed numbers on Mike Green's contract. There was another big contract signed that directly affects Odafe Oweh. We'll talk about that. Marcus Williams spoke out against the Ravens in a recent podcast. Matt Judon returned to Baltimore. We're talking all that and more in today's episode of the Flock Rundown.
Ravens Flock. The Flock Rundown is the place to be.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.
What's up, Ravens fans? My name is Ryan, and welcome back to another episode of the Flock Rundown. So we finally got the Mike Green guaranteed numbers, which was the reason for the entire holdout, by the way. We always knew what the contract was going to be. It was just how much is going to be guaranteed. And that number ended up being 65.65% of the entire deal, which is an increase from last year. The last year's second-round pick at that same slot got 54.01%. Mike Green's total rookie deal is $7.419 million, so 65.65% of that is $4.87 million guaranteed. So that is an increase from last year. A lot of the top second round picks did get fully guaranteed deals though. So the players and player association have been fighting for guaranteed contracts, fully guaranteed contracts. And it seems like they are definitely headed in that direction. I think at some point, a lot of contracts are going to be fully guaranteed. Other sports do that. I know football hasn't wanted to do that because there's more injuries and there's a lot more roster spots and whatnot. I get it. It's not how it used to be done. So owners and GMs and everyone are reluctant to be handing out fully guaranteed contracts, but players are fighting more and more for it, and they are winning. You know, they're increasing their guaranteed money. So definitely on the road to fully guaranteed contracts at some point, and this is a little bit of an inch closer. I'm just glad Mike Green signed and this is done. I didn't really care what the guaranteed numbers were, but I just wanted to report on it because that was the reason for the holdout, not just with him, but the entire second round. You know, they were only holding out for guaranteed money, and Mike Green ended up getting 65.65% of his contract fully guaranteed. Another player who just signed a massive deal that directly affects Odafe Oweh is Chiefs' George Karlaftis. He signed a 4-year, $93 million extension with $62 million guaranteed, and that comes out to $23.25 million a year. Now, we all know Odafe Oweh is in a contract year. He's currently playing on the 5th-year option that the Ravens picked up last year, and he's going to command well into the 20 millions then. If George Karlaftis is getting $23 million a year, I got to imagine Odafe Oweh is in a similar ballpark. You know, could be a little less, could be a little more. You know, I don't know what exactly the market's going to be after this season, but regardless, it's not going to be less than 20 million. And Odafe Oweh is going to command a major contract. The Ravens have a lot of guys to pay, so the real question is, are they going to pay Odafe Oweh 20 plus million with other contracts on the line like Isaiah Likely, Tyler Linderbaum, Travis Jones, you know, a Kyle Hamilton extension next year, Zay Flowers potential extension next year. I'm sure they'll pick up his option first, so that might be 2 years away. Lamar Jackson extension coming up, which I think should save some cap room, to be honest. So the main deals that are going to clog up the cap room in the short term are going to be Tyler Linderbaum, Isaiah Likely, Travis Jones, and maybe Odafe Oweh. I don't know. Are the Ravens going to pay 20 plus million? Let me know what you guys are thinking. I think I'm hesitant to say that they will. I feel like most of the time the Ravens let these pass rushers cash out and go somewhere else. We've seen it so many times throughout the history. I mean, going back to Paul Kruger, Donnell Ellerbe, Matt Judon, Zadarius Smith, there's a long list of pass rushers that the Ravens have let kind of ball out into their contract year and then go get a huge deal somewhere else, and they just draft another one. Mike Green being that guy who I think could be potentially better than most of the replacements we usually have. So I don't know. You know, we'll see how Odafe Oweh is this year. If he absolutely goes nuclear and gets 15 plus sacks, the Ravens are going to really have to think about paying him. You know, Odafe Oweh in his prime for the next 4 or 5 years wouldn't hurt the Ravens, I could tell you that. But are they going to pay 20 plus million with all those other guys to pay? That's the real debate. Speaking of Matt Judon, who is one of those pass rushers who cashed out and went elsewhere, IMJ Oliver 410 posted, "Hey, Lamar Jackson, man, we trying to get Matt Judon back over here and make this push. Lamar Jackson then reposted it. It says Baltimore is home. Matt Judon has also spoken recently that he would be very interested in coming back to Baltimore. I just don't know if there's room. I would totally welcome Matt Judon back as a depth piece, and it's a great story. I always want former Ravens to come back. I love Matt Judon. I love the time that he spent here. But unless they're completely moving on from the Adisa Isaac, David Ojabo, which they might, I don't know. But I also think it's fair to give them an offseason to compete and show if they can take a leap. Mainly David Ojabo. I think we haven't seen Adisa Isaac as much, and he's been here 1 year less. But David Ojabo, is probably kind of on the chopping block here. Like, if he doesn't have a great offseason, great training camp, great preseason, if they're not seeing promise, they could move on. And then a guy like Jadeveon Clowney or a Matt Judon coming back as a depth piece, I think makes a ton of sense. But if David Ojabo can take a leap, and I think you should give him a chance, then it might be better to roll with the young guys. So I don't know. I'm open-minded to it. I really don't care either way, whether we brought in a veteran like Clowney or Judon, or we just rolled with the young guys, because I think the top end of our pass rush unit's actually really good. And I really don't see any of those guys, pushing Odafe Oweh or even Kyle Van Noy or Mike Green or Tavius Robinson. I think those guys are going to play more than any addition we would add at this point. So a Matt Judon or a Clowney would really just be a depth piece, but nice veteran presence. They've succeeded here before. I totally would be welcoming of that happening, but I do want to give the young guys a chance right now throughout camp, and then we could always go sign a veteran later. I feel the same way about our safety room. I want to see Sanusi Kane and Bo Braid out there in meaningful reps in camp and the preseason. And then if they're not looking good, or the Ravens feel uncomfortable about the safety situation, then go bring in a Justin Simmons or whatever. So and a lot of these guys don't want to go through training camp anyway. The veterans don't really want to go through training camp. Clowney's admitted that before. So they probably would not mind signing a week or two before the season. And I think it gives the entire rest of the offseason, it gives the Ravens a chance to look at these young guys in meaningful roles, getting a lot of reps, and to really see what they got before they make that decision. Last thing I want to talk about is this Marcus Williams situation that is getting a lot of buzz since yesterday. I saw a bunch of Ravens accounts reposting a quote, and I'm like, where's this interview? Where's this interview? So I go scrolling on YouTube. I found the podcast. It only had 500 or 600 views, and it was on Terron Armstead's account. Found the podcast, clipped it up, put that on X yesterday. It's about a 3.5 minute clip. But essentially, Marcus Williams was blaming a lot of last year on miscommunication from the top down. It seemed like he wasn't on the same page as the coaches, especially the secondary coaches. And there was definitely some blame tossed their way.
Well, that situation happened. I mean, to be frank, I just think it was just a lot of miscommunication from the top down. There's a lot of stuff on my side that I could have done better. Of course, I take accountability for whatever action that I did that they didn't like, but I didn't know what actions those were. But I take accountability for maybe missed opportunities, maybe missed plays that I could have done better on. But as far as the communication from the top down, I feel like it could have been better. They could have communicated properly and effectively so that there was no miscommunication when, the switch was going to occur. I mean, I played football for a long time. You don't just get bad overnight. And most people on the outside will believe that plays that were given up may have been on me, but they don't really know the depths of the coverage or what we were actually running, what we were told. They don't really know. But as a safety, my responsibility is to do whatever I can to show up in the screen and maybe possibly make a play.
I definitely think there probably was some miscommunication, especially earlier last year. I mean, we had a new defensive coordinator in Zach Orr. The Ravens replaced their secondary coach with Chuck Pagano this year, and there definitely was some coaching issues early. So I don't think Marcus Williams is insanely off base here, but I definitely think he probably should have been a little bit more accountable. I don't think it was all coaching, because the second he was kind of taken out of the lineup and Ardarius Washington was brought in to take Kyle Hamilton's role, and Kyle Hamilton kind of took Marcus Williams' role, everything stabilized, and it was a lot better. So, for a safety being paid as much as Marcus Williams was, I feel like he probably should have just played better. Since the injuries, he just hasn't been playing himself. And in this clip, he said that he's still one of the best safeties in the league. And I know he's trying to go find a job right now. He's still a free agent. So, you don't want to make yourself look too bad. I totally get that. You don't really want to own up to everything. And other teams might be like, man, yeah, the film doesn't look great. And you're saying you had a really bad year, like maybe we're not going to give you an opportunity or whatever. But I do think he deserves a shot somewhere else. I'm not writing Marcus Williams off for good. I think in the right situation, he can still thrive. I do think he brings something to the table. He had a couple great years here in Baltimore. I'm not trashing Marcus Williams by any means, but I do think he should be a little bit more accountable for last year. The defense got a lot simpler too when Dean Pease came over and Kyle Hamilton moved back. We played a little bit simpler, so I think the communication probably got easier for everyone, so we don't really know exactly what was going on behind the scenes, so I think Marcus Williams does have somewhat of a point, but also should own up to his play a little bit more as well. I don't think it was just miscommunication. I know he did say that he had a few bad plays, but I think it was probably a little bit more of that. There was definitely some blame on Marcus Williams too, and then some blame on the coaching and communication to the players. So I don't know. It is what it is. We've moved on, and Marcus Williams isn't here. I'm wishing him the best somewhere else. And I think the Ravens defense is in a lot better place than it was earlier last year. We saw that change about halfway through anyway. And now we got Malachi Starks back there, Kyle Hamilton. I'm excited about the future and this season. But that's it for today, guys. Let me know what you guys are thinking about everything that we talked about. Training camp officially starts tomorrow. All the players report tomorrow. First open practice, I believe, is Wednesday, though, so probably won't get a ton of practice updates until Wednesday, but regardless, everyone reports tomorrow. So training camp officially starts tomorrow, and football's back, baby. Let's go. Can't wait. I'll be here talking about every single training camp practice all the way through the preseason, regular season. I'm not going anywhere. Appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in to another episode of the Flock Rundown and supporting this channel. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll let the greatest linebacker in the history of the game take us out.
Ravens Flock. The Flock Rundown is the place to be. My man Ryan has been a lifelong Ravens fan since he was born. The Flock Rundown. Nothing gets better than waking up and wondering how high we can fly. Tune in.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.